Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, October the 30th, 2025. And today we are talking about garlic that didn't survive the storage process, making sense of soil tests, plus what is the microplastics risk with high tunnels. So let's do it. All right, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope you all are doing well this last week of October. We're still thinking of our friends down there in Jamaica and Cuba, and I know we won't really know the extent of the damage for a bit, but the early images and reports are brutal with whole towns turned to rubble. So I can only imagine what the farmers are going through there. So sending our love and thoughts to you all and hoping for a speedy recovery. Here, it rained all day yesterday, if I'm allowed a comparatively trivial subject pivot, with more of the same on the way for today, officially kicking off our mud season. The next few months are when the soil becomes so saturated outside that even when it's covered in grass, you can sink 6 inches into it. Not all of Kentucky is that way, but this farm certainly is. It's great. Love it. Speaking of great, I had a great time yesterday with the live. Thank you to everyone who came out and asked your questions. We will do another one, I think, the day before Thanksgiving. We may even focus that one on cooking, so we shall see if we can pull something like that off. I've already had a relatively productive week, I suppose. I definitely started in on the cleaning up the farm part of the season, which I admit is not going to be the most interesting topic this winter, as it wasn't last year either, but sometimes that's just the way farming goes. I am still harvesting and such, which I did a fair amount on Tuesday. In some ways, this time of year is rough on the harvest front because it's cold and wet and I'm moving slow. But on the other hand, I quite enjoy the laid back pace of it, where I don't have 100 things that need to get done, all clouding my brain and forcing me to be fast. It's kind of that time of year I don't want to be going all that fast. I can't be going all that fast because it's cold, but also I don't particularly need to be. I am eyeing a slightly earlier start to my spring, however, this year, so I may be starting early spring crop sooner rather than later and may have to change the speed a little bit on my whatever I change speeds on. Anyway, as is the tradition on Thursdays, we will celebrate our Patreon members and answer a few of your questions. You can sign up to be a Patreon member and get one or some of your questions answered over there at patreon.com/no-till-growers. That is much appreciated and is the lifeblood of this work. So we thank you for anyone who goes over there and supports it. Our first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Patreon member Pastor Earl, who writes, quote, "Hi there. So East Texas guy here, just starting a small farm out with 1 acre plowed to loosen up the hard ground, then adding compost and soil, then tarping through the winter on 2 50 by 50 squares. Soil test came back. As a pastor, I'm decent in Hebrew and Greek, but the report might as well be an ancient lost language because I don't know where things should be for typical veggies. I don't trust the local ag college extension because they are pushing in quote unquote earth-friendly chemical solution. Still working my way through your book, so any direction for me to translate is appreciated," end quote. Great stuff, and thanks, Earl. So the thing with the extension offices and soil testing is that although it's getting better, certainly most extension agents are primarily serving sort of larger scale conventional ag and are not necessarily or maybe even likely to have a great deal of insight on organic amending. Again, I want to emphasize that the extension offices, they are doing better and getting better about it, but that is not everywhere, and it's not going to be super helpful in terms of recommending organic or at least non-chemical solutions to soil deficiencies and excesses. So what I often recommend is to use a lab like Logan Labs or Kinsey Ag Services. I think maybe may makes more sense for you because I think they're in Oklahoma, right? And you're in Texas, so just a little bit closer, or just one of those labs doing base cation saturation ratio testing, BCSR, as it's often referred to, or Albrecht method soil testing. Those might give you not only a better, more complete soil test, but also more applicable amendment recommendations. Those recommendations do come at an extra cost, however. Now, you can, with some work, definitely learn how to read a soil test by yourself. There are books like Hands-on Agronomy by Neil Kinsey, or Steve Solomon wrote a book called The Intelligent Gardener, which can be helpful in understanding some of these concepts of soil balancing. However, unless you really love the chemistry side of soil management, there's a lot to keep track of. So it may be easier and more enjoyable for some folks to just spend the money for professional insight / consultation from a working agronomist. There are also, however, websites and apps now that will help you for a fee read your soil analysis and offer you recommendations. And you can all feel free to put, the sites or whatever programs that you use in the comment section if you want to shout the ones that you use out. Basically, what that looks like is you just plug in your soil test results and it spits out the recommendations for amending. Tends to be a little bit cheaper than talking to an agronomist, but an agronomist might also, be able to see things that the computer can't. So I'll let you make that decision. There are a few things I like to look at on any soil test that are pretty simple concepts, such as soil organic matter. I want to see that number increasing slightly every year at around 1 foot down. Cation exchange capacity, which could use its own segment, but is essentially how capable your soil is of holding, plant available nutrients. A good range will depend on your soils, but you want your CEC, your cation exchange capacity, in the 20-ish range, if possible, for clay. Not a lot you can do about a low CEC, but that is one of those places where compost can help. Then pH, if your pH is too high or too low, that may affect your plant production and can be addressed, organically with amendments and also growing plants, cover crops. Other than that, most of the nutrient stuff I personally leave to the agronomist. I just prefer to not screw that stuff up. I don't know if that really helps you, Earl, but the options are really either learn the soil test reading craft yourself or ask someone else / pay someone else. And I generally recommend asking a professional, but also sometimes it's just fun to learn to craft. So to each their own. So anyway, let us know what you all think. Have you taken soil balancing and reading soil tests on yourself? What do you look for? What do you use? I don't personally geek out too much on the chemistry stuff. Again, I prefer to pay the pros where I can, and the biology is more of my interest than chemistry, which I will also concede are interrelated in many ways. So I also see the attraction. What are your experiences with that journey? Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, shriveled garlic. No biggie. We'll see. BRB.
Hey, Jesse and no-tillers. This is Peter Max coming to you from Southern Colorado at a post-wildfire scar burn, and I'm trying my hardest to do a lot of restoration projects, including radishes, daikon, and whatnot.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Memar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you $2 worth a month of value? $5? You can chip in and keep it going by becoming a Patreon member. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions, so Patreon members, make sure to get those in. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Robert Kvak, who writes, quote, "Hello, Jesse. Warm greetings from Slovakia, and many thanks to you and your team for the excellent content you create. It truly helps us to stay focused on things we enjoy most." You're welcome. Thank you. Here it comes. Since the late 2000s, our late autumns and especially winters here in an intermountain basin of the Carpathians have become rather mild. For years, we have been planting our hardneck to check bred varieties in mid to late November after sweet potatoes, always with abundant yields. This year, however, after harvesting the garlic at the beginning of July and curing it in the loft as usual, about 80% of bulbs from both varieties became slightly soft and many cloves turned yellowish or even brownish. We suspect that several extremely hot days, when the loft temperatures exceeded 95 degrees Fahrenheit, may have caused this, possibly combined with overly dry air. Do you think such heat could be the cause? More importantly, have you had experience planting softened yellowish cloves? Will they still sprout? Would you recommend planting them as soon as possible in October rather than waiting till November, as their viability may decline further? End quote. All right, great questions here, and I did answer this to some extent when it came in, but here are my general thoughts on what might have happened. My guess, not seeing the bulbs, is that it was indeed the heat probably in combination with the air movement. We had this happen to us one year when I got a little cocky with how well our garlic had been curing over the years, and took the fans off in this particular spot where we had to have fans because it was kind of in a corner where there was no air movement. Anyway, I took them off early to move them to the onions, and found that fall that we lost a lot of our garlic, almost all of it. It basically did what Drew is describing here, where it shriveled and turned soft and yellow, and I ended up having to purchase more seed garlic. What you may be going through is what happened to us, something referred to as waxy breakdown, which I will link in the show notes so you can look at pictures, but is basically just yellowy, waxy, sunken cloves on garlic, generally caused by heat or poor storage conditions. It's a physiological condition, meaning a microbe didn't likely cause it, but rather conditions or sometimes genetics are the culprit. Now, if there's a small amount of yellow, it will probably sprout, but if the whole thing is yellow and shriveled all the way through, I might not risk planting it at all, so as not to waste that space. To test it, you can also place the germ in some soil, not deep, by a window, and just see if it sprouts. And if it's only minor damage, I probably would plant it earlier rather than later. Now, it's also possible that you have a disease like fusarium or something, something similar, and it may not hurt to just check in case you might be inadvertently propagating something. At least look at photos of that on garlic. But the issue is common enough that with this waxy breakdown, that it is very likely to be ventilation/heat combo causing the waxy breakdown. So unfortunately, you may have to purchase some new garlic, but if you do, just some quick storage things to think about for next year. First, at harvest, be gentle with the crop. Bruising can lead to sunken cloves as well, so be careful as you pull and move the garlic. Consider hanging the bulbs to increase ventilation if you don't already, like stacking them in a big pile, obviously, is not great for ventilation, or find a way to just separate the bulbs. I've said this before, but we use woven wire fencing hanging down from these rafters that we have in one of our barns, and then we force the garlic bunches through there, and it just kind of dries there. It's not the most efficient thing in the world, but it's sturdy and provides a lot of ventilation. Also, if it's going to be hot immediately after harvest, as is often the case around that time of year, hot being above 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, then you will still want to get some fans on that garlic if you can. Those first 20-ish days after harvest are when the garlic is at the juiciest and most vulnerable, and I would argue also sometimes it's most delicious. After that curing stage, those first 20-ish days after harvest, you could consider moving the garlic to a cooler area or just a cooler as well if you have a walk-in or something similar, or a basement, cellar, that sort of thing. I did a whole segment, in fact, on curing garlic this summer, and I will link that in the show notes if that could be helpful. Anyway, I think that's all I have on this particular subject. Much luck to you this fall and next year on the garlic crop, though. Sending our best and also hoping to one day visit that area. I guess I've been to Austria and walked through a sliver of Hungary, but would love to actually get there and explore the Carpathian Mountains a little bit. It's sort of unrelated. I just recently watched a video by Planet Wild, love their work, about stopping illegal deforestation in the Carpathian Mountains in Romania, which is run by what they refer to as a shadow mafia. So shouts to all the great people doing that sort of and very often dangerous work to preserve those forests. I'll link that video in the show notes as well if you all are curious. Anyway, great question, and you all feel free to add your insight, commenters. Otherwise, it's break time, and when we come back, we will talk greenhouse plastics and microplastic risks. Be right back.
David from the Greater Goodness Farm and Garden on Woodby Island, Washington. And this is our 7-acre future homes and farm. Hopefully we'll get it started in earnest this next summer, get our home built.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Patreon member Drew McConnell, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, I have a question about high tunnel and greenhouse plastic. You've alluded to research on microplastics from plastic mulches many times. I'm curious if there is any research or data on microplastics from other plastics. I'm also curious how you think about high tunnels from a sustainability perspective. Covered growing space is often praised as an antidote to extremes of a changing climate, but what are the implications of increasing our dependence on plastics in this way? And what effect might the plastic itself be having on the soil in and around the tunnel? Thanks for all you do," end quote. All right, love it. Great questions here. Thank you. So To the first part of your question about microplastics in greenhouses, although the research is still pretty slim, the answer, I guess, based on the research we have, is a decent yes, that greenhouse/high tunnel areas do have elevated concentrations of microplastics. New plastics and old plastics both release micro and nanoplastics, and when they are sitting there in the sun, degrading year after year, they are slightly shedding some particles into the soil below. And even in a pretend world where the buildup in the water supply and soil of microplastics is not significant, one day that plastic will be hauled off to the dump where it will also further break down into more and more microplastics. In effect, plastic is just going to plastic. Moreover, most high tunnel structures do not move very much, so the concentration over time, though we don't yet have great long-term research on this that I can find at least, and feel free to link those in the comment section if you do know of some, all of that will build up because the tunnel's not moving. It's also worth noting that by covering a place with plastic, you are also going to have to use some amount of additional plastic for irrigation, plus some growers plant, directly into landscape fabrics, which are, of course, plastics that release their own microplastics. In the coming years, I think, provided the funding is there to study these things, we will get a better answer through research as to how deep the concern is. Some studies have just, shown as much microplastics in fields as greenhouses, so it's a pretty ubiquitous problem at the moment on farms. As I've said before, you almost without question have microplastics embedded in your body right now as you listen to or watch this podcast, though the majority of that comes from fibers and clothing and furniture. It's in our food, it's on our food, it's in our water, air, it's ubiquitous. Anyway, to the sustainability part of the question, what high tunnels enable growers to do is grow a large amount of food in a small amount of space. So the argument for their sustainability could be that they use less land, thus allowing for better large-scale land management. I think this does work as an argument in some ways, assuming that better large-scale land management is indeed occurring, forests, pasture, water management, etc. But also, what's happening is that land is getting really expensive and hard to access. So for some growers, they have to grow in tunnels just to maximize the space that they can afford. And indeed, in terms of weather, tunnels are like creating your own little chunk of Southern California. Dry, moderated in temperature, with water primarily only where you want or need it. Heavy rain comes through and the crops aren't going to, if the tunnel was built right, drown, or an early or late frost, no problem. How about we just grow all winter? Easy. Those are the kinds of things that tunnels afford. Now, of course, tunnels are quite vulnerable to wind as well, but they give much of the climate to the grower to manage. So from a business perspective, and from the perspective that they really maximize land usage and protect against certain extremes, I think tunnels are great. From an ecological perspective, especially as we are witnessing the world be less ecologically and environmentally focused and not more so as it should be, tunnels for tunnel's sake are just an extension of that. Again, to me, I think tunnels need to be coupled with great land practices to make sustainability sense. But the reality is that there's no current version of recycling or plastic remediation where using plastic in basically anything, albeit a necessity for a production farm in many respects, is ever going to be truly sustainable per se in an environmental sense. It's just about limiting our plastic usage and balancing our negative impacts with as many positive ones as we can muster. So anyway, great question, and thoughts on any and all of that, listeners, viewers, let us know. And otherwise, we're going to call it a Thursday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. That includes Patreon membership. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Couldn't hear it during the live, but you can hear it today. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of October, you get a shout out on the show. There were no new signups at all this week, which is all good. We're in the slow season of farm content creation. The economy is wonky, etc. I may just have to get back to my single day stories when we get Patreon support, or someone will have to bite the bullet and take one of those perennial stories supporting levels over there. That's always an option, just saying, to be a hero. No worries though. I love you all, and any and all support you can give us. You all rock. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.